So before we begin, I want to help give you guys a little bit of a little perspective on what we're going to talk about today. So I want you to imagine what it would be like if you were to close your eyes and then try to read a book or use your computer without ever opening your eyes. Do you think you could do it? I'd also like you to imagine that you were watching a video without any sound. And you can only see what's in the video, but you can't hear anything at all. So let's take it a step farther. Think about this. What if that video were a training tutorial for your job? And in the audio that you can't hear, there's important information that's being conveyed, and you're going to have to take a quiz or a test and pass it in order to keep your job. Would you be able to pass that test if you couldn't hear the audio? Probably not. How about this? Have you ever been distracted on a website, whether there's flashing lights or something over here or something over there? Ever get overwhelmed with too much information coming at you at once? Some of us may never experience any of these barriers, and for some, this is their everyday reality in their life, trying to navigate a world where there's obstacles everywhere they turn. But what if it doesn't have to be that way? I hope that helped give you a little bit of a perspective about what we're going to talk about today. And by the time that we're done, at the end of our time together, I hope that you understand the importance of digital accessibility. I hope that you learn a little bit about what it is, why it's important, who is impacted, when you should start thinking about it, and some things that you can do to get started. And lastly, I really hope that this inspires you to learn a little bit more about this very important subject. One thing I think that we can all agree on is that we live in a very diverse world. Our world is filled with people of all ages, cultures, levels of education, opinions, likes and dislikes, and varying levels of ability. And if you think, and technology has forever changed the way that we interact with the world around us. Whether it's performing your job, making a phone call, even driving a car or watching a movie, technology makes all of these things possible. Have you ever considered that there are people who don't experience technology as a convenient default? What happens when an entire population can't adequately interact with the technology that is there around them? It could be your website, it could be an application that your company has developed. They might feel excluded and frustrated, and sometimes they won't even be able to perform their jobs. And whether that's either at all or to the degree that they know that they're capable of, and to be honest, have spent years training to do. And it's not because of them, it's because the technology presents a barrier for them. The problem isn't the disability. The problem is that the technology itself is inaccessible. My name is Tracey Long, and I'm a digital accessibility transformation leader. I work as a consultant at a large financial services organization. I have over 20 years experience in IT. I'm very passionate about, and I consider myself an evangelist for accessibility. I love to volunteer my time with organizations that line up with my values. And for me, that's why I'm presenting today. I feel digital accessibility is very important. And I feel that as leaders, we need to be on a mission, right? So I'm a leader with purpose. I love helping people. And through my work with digital accessibility, I'm truly able to make a difference and give a voice to those who may not otherwise have one. On a personal note, I love to travel. I love spending time with my family and my friends, and we love food. So I love to eat. Just a little bit about me, but back to the topic at hand, digital accessibility. What is it? Simply put, it's creating digital content which is available to and can be used by anyone, regardless of what their abilities are. And digital content can be a website, it can be an application, whether it's web-based or installed on your desktop. It could be apps on mobile devices. Digital content can also be documentation, digital documentation, like a Word doc or PowerPoint slides, Excel, something like that. It also includes pictures and video content. Basically, digital content is any digital format that's used to convey information or perform a function. And digital accessibility is making all of that content that we just talked about available to and usable by everyone. Accessibility is all about people. And to put things into perspective, according to the World Health Organization, which we've heard a lot about these days, over 1 billion people globally identify as having some form of disability. That's 15% of the world's population. In the United States alone, 61 million, or 26% of adults, live with some form of disability. Now that may seem like a low percentage, but keep in mind we're talking about over 1 billion people. Now we're going to take a look at some different types of disabilities and really talk about who's impacted, who's affected when the digital content isn't accessible and the technology presents a barrier. So we talked about how diverse our population is, and well, the different types of disabilities are just as diverse as our population. While there are many different types of disabilities and they can differ from person to person in how they manifest, they can be grouped into 5 major categories. They're visual impairments, hearing impairments, motor, cognitive, and speech impairments. And a few things I'd like you to keep in mind. People might experience more than one type of disability at a time. Some disabilities are only temporary. For example, if someone whose arm might be in a cast due to an accident, or they're not able to use their hand temporarily, that's a temporary motor disability. Some people are born with disabilities, and some people develop them over time. The percentages that you see here listed are from the CDC's Disabilities, Impacts All of Us infographic from their website, and it refers to the statistics specifically in the US. Approximately 4.6% of people who have identified as having a disability have a visual impairment. This could be complete or partial blindness, it could be color blindness, it could be low vision. Hearing impaired. About 6% of people who have a disability experience complete or partial hearing loss. Motor impairments, 13.7% of people with disabilities have a motor impairment, which can be partial or total loss of muscle control. About 10.8% of the people with disabilities have a cognitive impairment, and that can affect the ability to think, concentrate, formulate ideas, reason, and remember things. Like all the categories that we've discussed so far, cognitive impairment has a wide range of people that are affected. And on the more severe side, a person with a cognitive impairment could have a disease such as Alzheimer's or traumatic brain injury. On the less severe side, someone could suffer from ADHD or dyslexia. There wasn't a percentage listed on the CDC infographic for speech impairment, but this impacts someone's ability to communicate verbally. Someone with a speech impairment may experience stuttering, slowed or hurried speech, or they may not even be able to speak at all. Now, you might be thinking that's great information, but what does that have to do with technology? Well, with the introduction of technology, people with disabilities are able to do things that they couldn't do before. For example, they can read a book or listen to music, browse the internet. In many cases, assistive technologies make this possible. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Assistive technologies help to remove the barriers that exist for people with disabilities. They work with the existing technology when the digital content has been developed to be compatible with the assistive technologies. There are many types of different assistive technologies available, and some examples are open book device, braille keyboards, using a keyboard alone as an alternative to using a mouse, vibrations on a phone, or screen reader software. That's just to name a few. So let's take screen reader software, for example. This is a software program that loads onto your computer and reads what type of information appears on the screen. I say reads because it doesn't actually read what is on the screen. But this enables a person who's blind or who has visual impairments to be able to independently navigate and use the digital content. But this only works if the digital content is compatible with the assistive technology. If someone's trying to navigate a website or an application, it needs to be developed in a way that will support those assistive technologies. In other words, there's things that web designers and software developers can do in order for assistive technologies to work. This is where digital accessibility comes in. So let's go back to that screen reader, for example. If someone who doesn't have a visual impairment goes to a restaurant, excuse me, they wouldn't read a menu cover to cover, right? You wouldn't just sit there and start at the very top and read all the way through top to bottom. Think about it, you'd skim through the menu, right? You'd go through the sections or the headings, right? You take a look and see the different appetizers and soups and salads and dinners, desserts, beverages. Someone without a sight impairment, they can skim through that menu and just jump to the desserts. I like desserts, so we'll just stop there. And when you're scanning through the desserts, you'll see the different types of desserts, right? You might see a molten brownie with ice cream, strawberry shortcake, chocolate cake. Well, I'm a chocolate girl. So I'd stop there, I'd read the description, see the price, and I'd make my decision. Well, screen readers work in the same way. They can read a list of different sections of a page or an application, and that helps with the navigation. They can tell the user a list of, the different sections. They can tell the user what a picture is, if the picture has alternative text. If the picture didn't have alternative text, the screen reader might just say image 3456.jpg or whatever the file name happens to be. The screen reader can give the user a list of all of the links from a specific page. So if all of the links just say click here underneath an image on the screen, then when the screen reader user goes to that list of links, all they're going to hear is click here, click here, click here, click here. How is the user supposed to know which item they want? Imagine how frustrating that must be for that user. So now we're going to talk a little bit about we've already talked a little bit about what digital accessibility is, who's affected by inaccessible technology, and how assistive technology helps. But why should you, why should you care about all of this for your business or your nonprofit? It's going to take some time, and we all know time is money, to make your digital content accessible. So why should you do that? Well, as we said at the beginning of our time together, we live in a very diverse world, and providing the ability for all people to be able to perform their daily activities independent of assistance from any other person, it not only increases productivity, it promotes independence, it boosts employee morale or user morale, but quite frankly, it's the right thing to do. And digital inclusivity also elevates your brand as a place who recognizes that all people are valued, no matter what. So I don't know why you wouldn't want to. If that's not enough, doing the right thing, if that's not enough motivation, there are laws and regulations in over 20 different countries, as you can see here, plus the European Union regarding digital accessibility. In the US alone, there's 6 different laws. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to go through the law with you. However, there is a link at the bottom of this slide, as well as in the reference section, which takes you directly to a website, and it lists out the laws by country. I'd encourage you to take a look at that. The chart on the right actually shows the number of accessibility lawsuits filed in the US from 2014 through 2019. And it was estimated that by the end of 2019, there would be over 11,000 accessibility lawsuits, cases filed in a federal court. That's an increase of over 84% since 2014 and 44% in just the last 2 years. Compelling numbers, right? But why should you start thinking about digital accessibility? Well, or when should you start thinking about digital accessibility? In short, as soon as possible. The sooner you get started, the better off you're going to be. If you're starting a new development project, you should start it at conception. Incorporating the accessibility standards from the beginning of a project can save you over 60% in time, effort, and cost compared to remediating after the fact. So that's not even taking into account the impact of potential lawsuits, of what a potential lawsuit could bring, along with any branding devaluation or loss of potential clients or even valuable employees. So I'm just going to touch quickly on the standards because there are standards, international standards in place that assist with accessibility. And they are called, or they're put forth by the World Wide Web Consortium. And there's a quote in the center of the screen, and that is by Tim Berners-Lee, who's founded the internet. It says, "The power of the web is in its universality. Access by everyone, regardless of disability, is an essential aspect." I think that's so profound. There are guidelines put forth, and the latest version is 2.1 is the latest published version, but 3.0 is in the works and it's coming out. There's 3 different levels of conformance to the WCAG or Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and the standard in the US is 2.0 currently. However, I would encourage you to take a look at least at 2.1 because that includes the most. There's lots of information in these links that are here on the slide for you. So how do you get started? I'm going to give you 5 ways that you can just get started pretty quickly. The first thing that I would suggest is hire an expert. There are industry professionals who specialize in digital accessibility. Bring somebody on and have them help you. The next thing that I would suggest is developing a standard. One of the first things you want to do is create a policy or a standard for your company or organization and say how you're going to address digital accessibility. Once you've developed that standard, set a baseline. From this date forward, we're going to make sure that all of our digital applications are accessible.
Hi, Tracy. I'm sorry to cut you off. We're just running really low on time. Thank you so much for talking, everybody. Thank you for coming. This will be recorded and all the slides will come to you on an email in a few days. And just before we let everyone go to the session, there were a few questions in the chat. Let us know if you. Yeah, so the question by Susan was pretty much which accessible website builder you would recommend, if there are any.
Yeah, that's not something that I can make a recommendation on. There are several different ones out there. What I would do is use Google, that's our best friend, and see which one works best for you. There's many different ones and they work differently, so I would recommend that.
That's really good. Thank you so much, everyone. Please go back into the agenda, join one of our next sessions, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.